So let's get started. Okay, so I tried to send out a 3-month look ahead, and this is just because I understand that everyone is busy, and I wanted to give you guys information about what's going on as far as meetings on a month-to-month basis, and also so you can project out what meetings you want to attend and kind of get a understanding of what those dates are and what's kind of going on. So just to kind of recap, September, we went before the BAR, that's the Board of Architectural Review. So within the development process, there are a lot of people who have to weigh in on anything that goes into the built environment. And they all have a particular role that they play in the development of the project. So for example, with the BAR, they look at the mass of the buildings. Are they too big? They look at the scaling of the buildings. Do they fit within the context as far as height, as far as size, with what's around it? And then they look at the architecture of it. So what is it starting to look like? What kind of issues are there? And they kind of give advice and suggestions on how we can make the design better. So we saw them in September, and once I get down to like design updates, I'll kind of recap what feedback we received from them and then how we kind of implemented it into what we have now. Then in October, we went before AHAC. AHAC is an advisory board, so Alexandria Housing and Affordability Advisory. So what they look at is all projects that have affordable housing included into the development project. So they want to know how many units are low income, how many units are what we call workforce housing, and then how many units are affordable housing. I mean, not affordable, market rate housing. So they want to look at the mixture of them. They want to look at how we're financing the project. So we went before them earlier this month. Last night we had BAG. BAG is a Braddock Implementation Advisory Group, another advisory group. They look at whether or not the project that we're proposing fits into the small area plan. So small area plans are the city's strategy to make sure that they're accomplishing their objectives. So a lot of the times, if the city has an area like the Braddock area, they may say, okay, this is within the Parker Gray district, so there's a historic element to it. They may say, okay, we want to see a park here, or we want to see um, a building that fits within the historic context. So they look at kind of those elements of it. Does it align with what the city is saying that they want to see in this area? Affordability is one of the things that they look at as well. So we had a really positive meeting from them as far as what the design is, and then those layers of affordability. Now we're having the resident meeting. This meeting, I'm just going to kind of recap some of like the major topics and then introduce HOU. I'm not going to get really deep into the design because we are having a town hall on Monday, and I really want to encourage you guys to attend the town hall meeting. So one of the things you'll hear me say it a bunch of times, I think you've heard it from Keith, when we don't have resident representation, others are able to control the narrative. So what that means is we have to present things to you guys. We have to get your feedback, but then we also have to present things to the larger general population and public. And that's all your neighboring communities and buildings. It's also civic associations, community organizations. And so sometimes at these town halls and other public meetings, you have a voice that's being heard that's not yours. And the problem with that sometimes is that people have a different perspective and perception of what this should be and what life is like for you all. And it's interesting because no one can tell your story better than you can tell your story. And sometimes the way that they think you live and how they feel about the amenities and the things that are available to you is completely different than how you feel about it and what your reality within the day-to-day actually is. So that's why we really want to make sure we're encouraging you guys to come to the town hall, let your voice be heard, and really represent what your reality is, right? What it's like to live in Samuel Madden currently, what you like about the proposed design, because you're the ones who are immediately impacted and influenced the most by this development. Other people they may drive by it, but they're not going to be living there. So we really want to make sure that you guys attend the town hall meeting. A flyer went out, and it's also been like posted in some of the local businesses like the Lost Dog and those smaller restaurants on Madison. And there's also some in Charles Houston. So please, please, please come out to the town hall. We're going to be going more in depth on where we are with the design. So I'm kind of giving an update, but I don't want to make these meetings too repetitive, right? So what I've kind of noted in the past is that I'll have this resident meeting and I'll go over the latest and greatest. And then if you attend the town hall or if you attend some of these other meetings, it's literally the same information, right? So because I value your time, I'm trying to strategize this in a way where I kind of keep you current, but I also make sure that you're not hearing the same thing over and over and over. And then in November, we have, of course, another resident meeting. This meeting, we're going to get deeper into relocation. So today I'm going to kind of introduce HOU. We're going to answer some of your questions about their services, the process in general. And then in November, we'll get more into like the nitty gritty of the process and then more of the details. Okay, so project resources. So I have been trying to get as much information out there as possible for residents to review and look at their leisure. So I know everyone's schedule is different. You know, some people might work first shift, second shift, third shift. You may just not be able to make the meetings. So one of the things that I did was I set up this project page, and this is specifically for the Samuel Madden redevelopment. And so some of the things that are going to be posted on the project page is project videos. So we currently have a YouTube channel. So like this recording, the recording of the last meeting, they're going to be posted there. But what I'm doing currently, I hired a digital media company to make like a shorter condensed version of these meetings, because these meetings sometimes can be an hour long. So they're reviewing the meeting and they're kind of pulling out just like overview, like high level, what you need to know. Because, you know, sometimes I tell stories and all that other stuff. And when people click on the link, I want them to get just, you know, the facts of it and cut all the rest of the stuff out. So the videos will be there. I'm also going to be doing like just small informational videos about like relocation, about, you know, certain aspects of the design and certain topics I'm hearing like security and things like that, how we're addressing those things. So you can find that on the project page. There's a timeline there. So that's going to keep current in case you don't have the look ahead. You'll be able to see where the development is progressing, what meetings we've had, what we're doing on a month to month. Then there's going to be some project documents. So these presentations, like this kind of slideshow, other slideshows that we've shared with city staff or the general public, those will be there for you to download and then look at, you know, whenever you have time. And then we also have a suggestion box. So if you feel like, okay, you know, you guys are getting us the information after the meetings, we should get it before the meetings, or you know, maybe don't give us the flyers at our door, send the flyers through the mail, you know, whatever suggestions you might have. I wanted to make sure that I provided a platform for you to be able to type those suggestions in, and that goes directly to my email so that I can just keep refining and keep making this better as we go along. Because I've been doing this for a long time, but every community is different.
I can hear it a little bit, but damn, it's not my phone because my phone was on all the way up.
Yeah. I was better. That was better.
Like the bullshit.
So I wrote a joke about my mom having to work in the circus during the pregnancy as a fire. You see this?
All right, so that's project resources. So you have the webpage, find videos, understand the timeline of the project documents for you to download whenever, you know, you have the time to review them, and then the suggestion box. Okay, so get into project schedule. So I wanted to make sure that I showed you guys an overview of the project. A lot of the times we don't show images like this because projects change, schedules change, and sometimes it's like, all right, you may think that this is a particular date that we said that relocation is going to happen. But depending on whether we get the approvals we need, whether we go before city council, sometimes city council may have conditions that we have to address before we can move forward. So there's a lot of things that can cause a delay in the schedule. But because we are going to be relocating you guys, because like there's so many different phases that are happening at the same time, I wanted to show this top image of what this timeline looks like, just so that you're well informed. So currently now we're in entitlement, and entitlement happens before a project is actually kind of real. It's getting all of those approvals. It's going before all of the different advisory boards. It's getting feedback from city staff, feedback from different advisory boards to make sure that the project is aligned with what the city needs and what everyone else is kind of, I guess, seeking to accomplish. So that's the entitlement phase. From there, we go into design. So at the end of entitlement, we go before city council. They approve and kind of stamp the project, or they give us conditions to kind of revisit certain aspects of it if it's things that we're not accomplishing well. From there, we go into full design. So you'll see images of this site design, how the site is laid out, how the buildings are situated on the site. Once that's confirmed, we get into more detail. So the design phase goes all the way into the fall of 2023, because we have to solidify how the buildings look on the site, where things are going to be located before we can get into the details of the lobby, individual unit layouts. So those are the things that happen a little further when we're just into the design phase. So that takes us all the way to the end of next year, or fall of next year. And then you see relocation. So relocation is going to start with community engagement. So we're kicking off that today by introducing HOU. They're going to go over some general information about the process. And then that goes all the way into moves. So community engagement, where they give you guys information. Then they're going to have some one-on-ones, and Jeray will talk about this further down into the presentation once she gets introduced. And then physical moves are not until the summer of 2023. So that's going to be kind of late summer. It could go into the fall, because again, this really depends on some of the other milestones that we have to reach. And then it also depends on some site work that we have to get done. And I'll go into that a little deeper into the presentation. Construction starts August next year. So that's when we actually break ground, right? That's when you start to see the bulldozers come into the site. You guys are going to be long gone before that, but that's when we're going to be breaking ground on construction. That's late next year. These buildings are going to take 2 years to completely construct. So you'll see that lease up will start November of 2024. And that's just really getting those applications in. And then move ins, that's you guys coming back to the property.
It was all that when Shani was on the phone.
That's not going to start until February of 2025. Okay, so design update. So again, we're in entitlement, but of course, entitlement includes parts of the design, because we have to be able to show how the buildings are going to sit on the site, how big the buildings are, how tall the buildings are. So there's a couple of submissions that happen within entitlement. So we submitted concept 1, that was really just massing. Concept 2, we started to get into where the different amenities are going to be, where the lobbies are going to be. Concept 3 was when we got into what those interior courtyards were going to look like, different things that were going to happen around the site. And then we started to look at what kind of materials, what it was going to look like. Then we get into preliminary completeness 1. So we submitted that early this month. And then that's getting into more detail. So that's what you'll see today. That's our preliminary 1 kind of submission. So you'll see the northern tip. That's that really gateway component. That's the eye catcher of the project. And then you'll see a little bit of like what the building is starting to take shape as you drive down North Henry and North Patrick. Okay, so just to give you guys an update on design development. So a lot has changed from the initial, and when I say initial, I mean, we put out a request for proposal to get bids in from contractors before we selected a co-developer, well, to get them in 4 co-developer teams. So this image on the left, this was what Fairstead and Mill Creek presented to us in their proposal. So you can see a lot of things it's different. We had 2 courtyards on the southern block. There was a very large play area and park on the northern tip. Those have changed. The park on the northern tip, we realized just was not the safest place to house a play area for children, because you have those 2 high-speed traffic streets, highly trafficked streets, and it just wasn't very secure. So over the development of the design, that park at this northern tip has gotten smaller and smaller. Right now we're calling it a plaza because we actually relocated the play area to off of Montgomery. So you'll see that's different from the original when we did daylight studies. So I don't know if you guys have ever experienced an interior courtyard within a very tall building. So our buildings, this northern building is 6 stories tall, and the south building, the south building is 7 stories tall. So that's about 70 feet, if not higher, off the ground. And so when we did a light study for this initial, we wanted to make sure that these courtyards weren't in shadow. So you know how the sun moves around from east to west. What it was doing was casting a very large shadow in the courtyards, and that was causing them to be dark. And whenever you have dark courtyards, they're just not pleasant. They're gloomy, they're cold. So that changed from the initial to the current. We widened the courtyard so that you can get a lot more daylight and that they could be more pleasant to be in, because it's pointless to have a courtyard that's just not pleasant to actually grill, or the pool would have been cold all the time. It just wasn't very reasonable. So those are some of the bigger changes. We moved that play area from the northern tip to off of Montgomery. So we added a courtyard right off of Montgomery. And then at the bottom here, you can see the difference in what the building looked like. Before, it was very flat at the northern tip. That's where you see this image right under it. It didn't address the site well. The site is almost like a ship, right? It kind of meets at a point. And at first, they were just kind of cutting that off like a piece of pie. And that just wasn't, design-wise, it just didn't speak to the actual lay of the land. So what they ended up doing was kind of pointing it just a little to emphasize this face, this northern face of the building, because that's kind of like that gateway, that's that welcoming component of the building. So those are kind of the major changes from initial to where we are now. And that happened throughout the course of concept 1, concept 2, concept 3, as we're getting feedback from you guys, as we're getting feedback from city staff and all of these advisory boards and panels we have to go before. So this is before you a latest and greatest of the site plan. So this kind of shows again how that northern plaza has shrunk a little bit. There's some amenity spaces there. It shows where the units are going to be situated. This blue area is circulation area. So you see these kind of lines that are in the middle of these orange spaces. Those are corridors. So those are hallways. Then you see how the lobbies are facing each other, because these are 2 buildings, but it's still one property. Residents are going to be able to, go back and forth. So you'll see the pool is on the northern block, but you'll have full access even if you live on, pool is on the southern block, but you'll have full access even if you live on the northern block. So it's starting to just develop more. You see the child care wraps around so that they have access and eyes to the play area. And then we'll get into what amenities are going to be here at the end of the year. So I'm going to have another workshop with residents to see, okay, what do you guys want here? We know from the vision, we did like a visioning process at the very beginning. Some of the things were like having a business center, gyms, like a party room. So we're going to get the designers to come out and kind of talk to you guys as to what they envision and get some feedback. They did incorporate what you had suggested and what you had provided feedback on, what you wanted there. So we're going to get a little more into that as well. So looking at the exterior, these are the changes between the last time I presented this to you guys and what it looks like now. So this is from concept 3 at the top. This is what the building looked like. And now we're at preliminary completeness 1, which is at the bottom. So here's what changed. And I mean, it's kind of obvious if you're looking at the screen, but just to talk through it, originally, again, we circulated this image to city staff, to the advisory boards, the BAR. And because you kind of come down Route 1 and you see this face, this northern face, they wanted it to be a little more welcoming. The term they're using is a gateway component. So that means that this is the first thing you're going to see. We want it to be something that's a moment, right? Something that's amazing, something that's strong, something that speaks to the neighborhood. And another thing you'll notice is that we preserve the tree. So right now there's this beautiful oak tree there. It's very large, it's very old. And originally we were going to remove it, but we decided not to remove it. We decided to keep it there because trees have numerous benefits to the built environment, to the environment around us. You know, they clean the air, all of that good stuff. And we typically in development don't want to demolish trees when we don't have to. So we revisited the keeping the tree. We had an arborist, which is like a plant specialist, come out and look at how healthy it was, whether it could withstand construction, because once we start demoing and shaking the ground, sometimes that can damage the root systems. So we did decide to keep the tree. So from the top image to the bottom image, you see the whole face of the building has changed. It's taller. It's more of a, what we're thinking, landmark, right? We want something to be like, oh, that's Samuel Madden. I'm now in the Braddock metro area. I'm now in, you know, this part of Old Town or Parker Gray area. So those were the bigger changes to how the exterior looks. You see like these buildings on the side, oh, not buildings, but these facades on the sides haven't changed. So that kind of was the biggest change from concept 3 to preliminary 1. And so just to kind of hit some of the highlights, because I see we have more residents here. You'll see that the buildings on the side look differently. So one of the things that we do when we have such massive buildings, these are really big buildings, and we don't want them to feel like huge buildings because sometimes that can feel institutional, right? It can feel like it's a prison, or it can look like it's a school, or, you know, it doesn't look residential. It doesn't feel residential. And it gets very mundane if you're driving by it to see the same face of a building for a whole block or 2 blocks. So we start to separate it and break it up and kind of apply a different look to parts of the building so that it feels like you're driving by or you're walking by different buildings and not just one big, huge building. So you see that those things really didn't change because they're kind of stepping down. So they're getting shorter the closer they get to the street, so that you don't feel as small on the street. We want to make sure that the walking experience around these buildings, there are a lot of people who are constantly walking their dogs and just walking through Alexandria. And that's one of the charming elements to Alexandria. They want to keep it walkable. So when you have massive buildings like this, and I guess the best example is if you've ever traveled to New York City or parts of DC, and you're on the street, you're like walking down the sidewalk and you're walking past a very, very tall building, you feel kind of small. And it also kind of increases the wind speed. For some reason, wind will take off the side of a building and it makes it kind of windy and just uncomfortable. So there's a couple of things we did in the design to kind of approach things like that and to strategize how to just make it feel more comfortable, more walkable, more safe. So those are the kind of highlights of the design. So before we get into relocation, I'm going to open up. Do you guys have any questions about the design or about the schedule? Okay, so we will hop into relocation. So we have Jeray from HOU. on the call. So I will turn it over to you, Jeray, to introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about relocation for Samuel Madden.
Thank you, Kanesha, and good evening, everyone. My name is Jeray Wilson. I am a project director with Housing Opportunities Unlimited. We are a relocation consulting firm, and we specialize in resident, temporary, permanent, and in-place relocation. We are celebrating our 40th year in the business this upcoming October of just providing comprehensive resident services across the country. So we currently coordinate and facilitate and service 31 states plus Washington, D.C., and now St. Croix. And we have, over the past 40 years, successfully relocated over 33,000 households. So I currently oversee 17 projects, and I've been with the company for 15 years. I oversee 17 projects in DC, Maryland, Virginia, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Seattle, Washington. So our company, we work with private and nonprofit developers, housing authorities, and project managers to relocate residents during redevelopment. And then what that means is our role is to assist every resident from beginning to end during the relocation process. We ensure that it is as seamless and stress-free as possible. I tell residents, like, you don't get to stress, my staff and I stress for you. So we take care of everything for you, ensuring that you receive all of the regulatory notices, whether that be federal, state, or city. We do that. We meet with every individual household, and we do one-on-one assessments so that we can determine what we need to do to best service you and your household. We come in and do that. We sit with you. We explain all of your relocation benefits to you. We make sure that you get all your notices timely. So sometimes it may seem like you're oversaturated with information, but we just want to ensure that you are a part of the process. So you will receive regulatory notices via certified mail and hand delivery. And sometimes, once we gather information, we'll send email blasts. You'll have all of our contact information. We send text blasts. And then we, also do door-to-door mailing and informational notices as well to ensure that you are engaged and fully understand what's going on with the project. So we will be working with Fairstead and ARHA during the entire process for all households of Samuel Madden. And then, once it comes time for you to go through the actual relocation, we assist you with finding housing. We assist we coordinate your move, we oversee your move. We ensure that there are no issues during your move. We assist you with transferring services if you need it. And then in the end, we do a decent, safe, and sanitary inspection to make sure that your new unit is ready for you and your household to move into. And then we do that on the way back too. So once we find out that Samuel Madden is ready for reoccupancy, we will distribute the notices and assist you with relocating back to your new home. I hope I covered almost everything. I hope I didn't go too fast, but if you have any questions, Kanesha is going to provide you with my contact information. I know that you saw on the schedule a couple slides back. We will be reaching out to all households in the upcoming, in December, actually, to start scheduling the one-on-one household assessments. But if you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to me. You can call, text, or email me, and I will be on the next resident meeting scheduled for November.
Just to touch on some questions that I received the last meeting, just to give you a little more information. Okay, so one of the questions were, when are we relocating? So right now we're looking at summer 2023. So we're looking at approximately 9 months out. So now we're getting into less than a year. And again, this can slide back. For example, we are going to have some archaeology work upcoming to the property. And so I'll get into that just really quickly, just to give you guys a heads up. So what's happening is Samuel Madden is a historic property, and what it has is significant historic value to the city of Alexandria. So to give you some background, prior to the existing buildings being there, well, I'll take it way back. 1800s. In 1800s, Samuel Madden had some Black families who owned land there, and that lived there. They owned land, they lived there. After that, they had some kind of civil war activity. So we know that there was a bakery there that kind of fed soldiers. We know that there was a Black old folks home is what they called it back then. So that was there on the property. Then we think that there could have been a Civil War camp on the property as well. So what happens is when you have properties that have a history to them, we didn't build and construct the way we do now back then. So sometimes what happens is, when those people lived there in the late 1800s, their houses could have burned down or could have been burned down. We're not going to get into that. And then they could have been just kind of dirt tossed over them, and then something else could have been built on top of it. Also, when you have any kind of war activity, a lot of the times they would kind of bury weapons and things like that. And then things will be built over it later in the years. So we did a kind of historic study on this particular property that goes back way to early 1800s. And we discovered that there may have been Civil War people there. We discovered that there were these different, homes, that they had some, Black homeowners way back in, late 1800s, which is rare, right? Because that wasn't a thing culturally. So what that means is there may be some archaeology findings there. So what happens is they come out, city archaeology comes out, they do some digging, and that digging is located where we think those structures were. And they're looking to find anything of historic significance. So, they did it at the James Bland, they did it at Lineage. And, what happens, they might find old weapons, or they might find old artifacts from when the Civil War camp was there. And then those go into a museum. So it's kind of a way of cherishing history, discovering history, new history, and being able to write in the narrative of the African-American contribution to the history of Alexandria. So I don't have all of the details just yet on when they're going to be digging. We're still kind of hashing that out. What I do know is there are going to be sites, trenches around the property. They're going to come out in one day. So I learned from the last time when we had that environmental digging that they need to make sure that not only do they dig and refill and cap all in one day for safety reasons, but that they get this done as seamlessly as possible. So once I have, more details, of course, I will share it with you guys. I'll send some things out via mail. I'll have more information in our November meeting. This is still months out, but of course, I always like to keep you guys current when I find information out. I like to at least bring it to the forefront in these meetings. So that's coming up, just to give you a heads up. Like I said, I'll give you more information once I get it. So that's just to check a box. So back to relocation. Another question was, how much time do we have? Okay, so I kind of answered that already. You have approximately 9 months. That's given we get that approval from City Council in February. Everything is riding on this approval. If we don't have this approval, then we have to kind of go back and make whatever revisions. So again, schedules slip at this point. But once we do have that approval, and we think that we are in a good standing point because we have been to these multiple boards. We have made a lot of revisions and a lot of edits via the feedback we've received. And it's a really good design. Next question was, are we getting vouchers? Yes, you will be getting vouchers, and we'll get into the type of vouchers and what you can do with it in November meeting. Just to give you guys a little more detail. Are we being moved by housing? our staff is not going to come out and move you guys. You guys are going to have professional movers that are going to come out, pack your things. You'll get packing materials. You'll have them moving your things. And then you also will not have an incurred cost. So I really want to stress that, because that is one of the things that we required in the front. So when we went out and said, hey, we need some co-developers, we have this project, we made sure that we made everyone buy into the relocation budget, right? So ARHA has put in funds, Fairstead has put in funds, Mill Creek has put in funds, the community group, everyone has put in funds so that you guys do not have to come out of pocket for relocation. So some of the things that are covered is utility call, if we have to disconnect, reconnect, moving expenses, your deposits. So I'll have, again, more information, and you'll get this in writing as well, because I think that's very important. So you'll get this all in writing so you know what's all covered, but the moving will be of no expense to you. The next question was, do we have to use vouchers, or can we stay within housing, public housing? So we are currently kind of working through this question. What we're doing now is that everyone's taking an inventory of their current housing. So both Fairstead and Mill Creek are housing providers. So they have properties with units that are around the Alexandria area. So they're looking at, okay, how many vacancies will we have around the time that Samuel Madden residents will be moving? And then within our portfolio, we're going to be looking at that too. How many vacancies will we have? Will we be able to move residents if they choose, right? Because this is about your choice as well. We're not going to force you to move anywhere. So you'll have the option of, okay, do I want to stay within public housing, or do I want to go and use my voucher and get into a market rate unit? So that's kind of the answer to that. You'll have the choice depending on what our vacancy and our availability is. And where will we move to? So that's kind of still in the mix. That's part of that process of everyone looking at what kind of vacancies they'll have and what kind of inventory they'll have, and then we'll give options. And I think in the relocation plan, we had at least 2 to 3 options to provide to residents. So you won't just be told this is where you're going and you have no choice. You will have options to decide, what is best for you and your family.
And Kanesha, I just wanted to add to that quickly to piggyback off of that. When you receive your notice of eligibility, we're going to provide you with 3 comparable units. These are just based on the information that we obtain from your household assessments, but this in no way means that we're deciding that one of these 3 units are where you're going to be relocating to. So you have the option to say, no, this doesn't work for my household, or just, no, I don't like the area, I don't like the color, I don't like, we don't want you to lose out on opportunities, but this is going to be your home for the next 2 years. So we want you and your family to be comfortable. So when you receive those notices and it has the units on there, we want you to check them out. We want you to go and tour the units, but also know that if there are other places that you think that you and your family will be more comfortable, different neighborhoods or different places, let us know. And we're also going to be providing, when that time comes, unit availabilities weekly. So we're going to send that out to every household, based on the information from the outside market and also the partners that we are going to be working with.
Excuse me. Do we get a chance to see their places before we decide?
Yes, we encourage you to contact the properties and tour the units if they are allowing you to do so. Sometimes properties have availability later in the future that you can apply for a unit that a resident has put a notice on. So they may have a different unit to show you, but the actual unit for the time frame where you need to move may not be available. But we encourage residents, there are a small amount of properties who are still doing virtual tours, but most properties now welcome you to come in and look at their property and look at units.
I'm done. Those were the kind of some of the questions I received. So what I'm doing now also is I'm creating what I'm calling a question and answer. So I have these questions and I have a couple of more questions. I'm formalizing formal answers, and some will have more like elaborate information to it. And then I'll distribute that before our November meeting. So you will get in your next package of meeting materials, you'll get that Q&A. So that's going to hit on the questions that I just answered and then more questions. If you have questions, please feel free to go to our website and either put it in the suggestion box or send it to our ARHA email, which is on your flyer. And I'll send it out again for everyone to have it. It's communityengagement@arha.us. So if you send some questions this week, if you think of something tomorrow or next week while you're washing dishes or whatever, just feel free to shoot it over and I'll add it into that Q&A. Any more questions? Don't be shy, guys.
I did have a question. I attended one of the first meetings, and some of the things that I had we talked about is the maintenance issues in the unit. I haven't seen anyone stop by or anything since it's going to be another 9 months. That was one of the main concerns, and also I guess fees that I see that there has been added to some of these maintenance fee issues. Or is there any possible way to actually try to look for somewhere to move before that time frame?
So what we're doing to address maintenance issues is we've been having this ongoing stabilization phase of the property. So you should see this week, I broke it down into kind of these different sections of things that we needed to address per your work orders. So I went back 2 years and I looked at all of the work orders that you guys have put in to get a general sense of the condition of the existing buildings. So I saw a lot of work orders about clogs. I saw a lot of work orders about exterior lighting being out. So we started stabilization with property management to come out there and look at each unit and go through and say, okay, let's make sure that the sinks are working properly. Let's make sure that the lights are working. So you will see people coming out in the coming weeks to start to fix and repair, because we do get that 9 months is a long time for you to be there. We want to make sure you're as comfortable as possible. So you'll start to see more property management coming out, fixing things. Feel free to still continue to put in work orders. If it's an emergency, please, please, please put in a work order to make sure that, you know, we come out. We're not trying to just leave you guys there because we know you're going to move. That's not acceptable. If there's issues, we need to address it now to keep you comfortable.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, wait, let me stop recording. So we do have property management on the call, so I'm going to stop recording. So if you guys do have any specific issues, you can give your address, because I don't like for people to give their address via recording.